ВВП в России, может быть, не все так здорово, как нам бы с вами хотелось. У нас есть дефицит бюджета, который был недавно одобрен президентом, который предполагает достаточно серьезное сокращение, если не сказать замораживание роста тарифов, и как следствие, что может привести в нашей экономике удельный вес государственных компаний или компаний с госучастием в капитализации Московской биржи составляет более 50%, привести к замораживанию их инвестиционных программ. Может сказаться в том числе и на идеях по созданию, в том числе, корпоративных венчурных фондов или инвестиций в инновации как таковые. Может быть, у вас, как у людей, которые читали внимательную программу, явился вопрос, а почему у нас столько представителей израильского государства сегодня в панели присутствуют. В общем и целом, вы их тоже слушали из представителей Эрнста & Янга. Честно говоря, ответ, который у организаторов появился, и у меня эта мысль постоянно в голове крутится, связан с тем, что высокий уровень успеха разработок, технических разработок, их коммерциализации, в том числе на мировом рынке, не только на территории государства Израиль, а широкое присутствие традиционных, скажем так, калифорнийского типа венчурных фондов, практически большое количество из которых имеют свои офисы в Израиле, и, безусловно, самый маленький рынок, который заставил 7-миллионную нацию найти способы коммерциализации, организации занятости своего населения и коммерциализации своих инновационных разработок за пределами страны. Нам кажется, это важно сейчас, особенно для России, когда мы смотрим не только на внутренний рынок, но и на внешний. Безусловно, прежде чем мы перейдем к самому анализу, я бы хотел рассказать о недавно выпущенном, вы наверняка могли увидеть это в прессе, сообщение о опубликованном очередном из рейтингов, подготовленном уважаемой бизнес-школой французской ИСИАД, которая опубликовала индекс инновационности с точки зрения талантов, если хотите, о месте и рейтинге разных стран в иерархии «Кто лучше делает талант». Россия заняла почетное среднее место из 103 участников рейтинга, 51 место. Но самым тревожным, с моей точки зрения, результатом, который был представлен участниками этого исследования, явилось то, что Россия по такому параметру, например, как готовность компаний внедрять новые технологии, получила 101 место в этом рейтинге, из 103, прошу заметить. А интенсивность конкуренции на внутреннем рынке представила и положила российское государство 92 место. В связи с этим, вот тематика сегодняшнего нашего заседания, нашей панели, я бы хотел повернуть в такую сторону. Вот для оценки востребованности корпоративных венчурных инвестиций как инструмента предлагается в процессе нашей сегодняшней дискуссии, к коллегам своим обращаясь, оценить всего два, но достаточно широких параметра. Первый, в каком случае крупным компаниям необходимо заниматься развитием программ корпоративного венчурного инвестирования и какие задачи должны ставиться, исходя из бизнес-модели компании и сложившихся экономических условий. Не факт, что каждой компании, наверное, надо заниматься корпоративными инвестициями. Пункт первый. Пункт второй. Если принципиальное решение о развитии программ корпоративных венчурных инвестиций принято, то какие вопросы должны быть на повестке дня? Вот я бы хотел в рамках сегодняшней дискуссии обсудить, какие факторы позволяют компаниям, принявшим решение о развитии программы инвестирования, получить конкурентное преимущество. И вообще, является ли конкурентные преимущества, раз мы обсуждаем его, главным фактором, важным, или есть альтернативные задачи, которые должны ставиться во главу развития программы. И мой первый вопрос к Амикаму Леванону, который недавно, если я правильно понимаю, работал в израильской электрической корпорации. Амикам, компания, в которой вам пришлось работать в недавнем прошлом, является монополистом на рынке Израиля. И с точки зрения владения это очень похоже на множество российских компаний с государственным участием. Безусловно, и монополистам необходимо обновлять свои основные фонды, искать способы повышения эффективности на всей цепочке создания стоимости, генерации до потребления, но монополисту куда спешить? Как соблюсти баланс? Что делать, если делать самостоятельно, in-house, а что нужно брать на рынке? И какие могут быть побудительные мотивы у компании с госучастием заниматься инновациями?
Thank you very much for the introduction.
Can you talk to Mike?
Hello? Okay. I'll talk from here so that you can hear me in the microphone. Thank you, Andre, for the introduction. Should I take that close? Okay, that's more comfortable. So, I was asked to speak a little bit about our experience in Israel from a utility perspective of innovation. This is getting complicated here. I'll talk 15 minutes and then get questions at the end, I guess. So basically, my experience has been in Israel started already 25 years ago with early stage startups. So I went through the entire period that you mentioned of Israel going through a phase from development, from military-related technologies to startup combinations, and then technology incubators, venture capital, which happened, and I went through different stations in my life doing this. And in the since 2009, I was asked by the utility company to come and create a technology incubator, which is inside a government-owned, monopoly of a utility. Do I have the slides, or do I? So we talked in the first session about innovation. I don't want to go again about all the high-level stuff about innovation, but corporates tend to want to innovate because of 4 major reasons, and which you can read the small letters, but I would say one of them is threats. They are afraid of something happening. Revenues are falling, the products don't fit, etc. The other is that the CEOs or the management want to expand. They want to do something new. The third thing I would say is internal. There are many internal forces. I mentioned a few. Employees are not happy. Something is wrong with the organization, and they want to do something new again. And then there's external forces, public relations, something is happening in the atmosphere, things like that, which also make them say, I want to make something new. Is CVC or corporate venture capital the only reason, the only way to do it? I don't think so. I think it's been mentioned in the previous session about that CVC is not a solution for everything. We're going to focus here on CVC, which is very important. However, it can be quite effective, as you will see in some of the examples that we've had here. So, looking from the personal side, I would like to actually emphasize in this talk more the people involved, rather than the overall policies of things. Inside a corporate, there are different people that want to create CVC, and they have different reasons. There may be financial reasons, like the CFO or the CEO, which wants to they have pressure to improve results. They just want to see results. Can CVC or can the new little companies create better financial results for the corporate? Maybe. We'll see that in a second. They do believe that exits of these companies will bring a lot of financial wealth to the company. There's technical reasons. Some people want to see there more new technologies, new ideas, and bring them in, and gain knowledge, gain agility, enter new product lines. There's tactical reasons for the CVC which can change the corporate. It may respond quicker because a small company responds quicker, so they say, okay, let's see the small companies work and we'll see how we can adopt their ways of methodologies and also do the same. And there's the strategic reasons, like to get a better view of the world. All these issues were there when we started the corporate venture capital incubator in the utility company. And they were there from different people for different reasons, and I call all these people stakeholders of the corporate who want to do something new, and you have to take into account the different ideas, if the different mindsets of the different people if you want to do something right. So managing corporate venture is definitely not easy with all these ideas and all these different people and reasons. And the most difficult challenge, and I will mention that in the future, was to get, whether I put at the bottom, difficult to make use of the knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge, new knowledge that is being built at the corporate, at the venture companies. How do you get this knowledge back to the big corporate, and vice versa? How do you get knowledge and know-how coming from the corporate to the small companies and make use of that? I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have experienced, and reading it about other corporates, I think that's something that happens also in other companies. And you must remember that some venture failed. And if you go to, we had difficulty to explain that, and it's still a problem there to explain all the management, especially government-owned, why some of the money will be evaporated, gone. And you have to be able to, even from a legal and structural way, to make that happen, to enable this. This is government money, and if government disappears, someone has to explain. And we have to know how to do that. So one of the issues that I mentioned, which is very, very important in my opinion, is to look at the stakeholders. who would actually benefit from having a CVC? And think about it. I'm not giving an answer here, but there will be shareholders. Is the corporate shareholders, is the price of the corporate shares going to go up? Are the employees going to gain anything? Are the unions of workers, will they support this action? We have a lot of issues with the unions, although they never said a word. It was always in the background. But we have to consider their ideas. Management, what are they going to benefit from this? Of course, the R&D is major. Government, public, etc. I think the key is to engage as many as possible of those stakeholders in the process, especially the CFO, the R&D, the CEO, those people, and even in our case, the government in a way, at least in the background. And I must tell you that the government in Israel, despite everything that's been said, had difficulty until today to let the monopoly utility actually have its own venture fund. So, in fact, we did that. The government didn't do anything against, but they didn't support. And in fact, in the early days, we wanted to have that as a completely independent subsidiary, like start it within the company, then spin it out. We couldn't. At some point, this was blocked for different reasons, which were not related to the performance of the fund, actually. It was related to other issues completely not related to what we were doing, in which the government didn't want the utility to develop beyond certain boundaries at this point in time. So, things are delayed. But at the same time, they let us work on our own venture companies and invest in them and develop them as we please. So, when we look at one of the issues that Andrea asked me is how do you measure the success? Very important. This is one of the key problems. I think Paul will discuss that a bit. How do you measure success of these initiatives with the corporate? Again, as I said, there are different people there. Different people, have different ideas, different views, and each one of them has a different mindset of what to look for. Some will see, let's see, did they make any money? Well, so if that's in the corporate. But from the outside, if I look at the external view, it's normal. We want to see that the portfolio companies are growing, they're successful, they make money, they attract additional investments. This is very important. You have to see that quality entrepreneurs keep coming. If they're not coming, and you have to dig for companies and nobody's coming, something is going wrong. If leading investors are not investing in the same companies that you've invested in, again, something may be going wrong. You don't want to do everything yourself. You don't want to have a corporate venture which takes all the risk on its shoulders the entire journey. You want to have others joining, so to share the risk. That's another issue. It's not just sharing the benefits, it's also sharing the risk. But from the corporate, as I said, the different stakeholders need to be kept happy. So there may be the financial people who want to see that there's returns. We have to see the information flows well between the CVC companies and the corporate, which, as I mentioned, is a major issue. We want to see that the different business units, in our case there was no business units, but there were different departments, that they can actually endorse some of those products and try them and test them and do something with them. It's not trivial. It's not trivial because they are measured in a different way. So how do you make them actually put hours of their employees to test a product that has been developed by a startup that hasn't been tested before? They're not used to it, like you said in Russia. I mean, just imagine a utility engineer gets a product that is not tested, and on the other hand, he has another product coming from USA or somewhere that has been tested, and he has to decide which one to work on. He would probably prefer the one that is less risky, but on the other hand, if he decided to work with the one that has been developed by one of our startup companies, he may be helping them to make money, to succeed, to sell, to export, and create a whole economy, but that's not his business. It's somebody else's business. So it's tough for him. So, and then to see that the corporate actually enjoys some business. It's not just about technology, that there is some business collaboration. So there will be a product coming from one of the corporates of the venture companies that that Israeli utility can actually adopt and do something with it. Now, we had a problem. The utility in Israel is not allowed to do anything except sell electricity to the local market. But it has no restrictions on the foreign market. So in principle, at least, they were thinking of how to combine a product developed by our small fund and market it through connections in other territories. This is to bypass a specific regulation that we had. So just saying that the CVC success is not just about capital gains, it's about many, many other things. Let me skip about that because we already mentioned that and time is short, but you can read it quickly. The main thing is the first line. The corporate venture capital is a different animal. It is not the corporate, it is not a division, and it's not also a typical venture capital firm that is measured only or mainly by, well I say only, by capital gain. And therefore, as a result of all the problems, you must have an active role of the top management of the corporate. In our case, the CEO was there, he was sitting as chairing every screening committee and put a lot of his own energy. He came, actually this specific CEO was unique because he came on board a government-owned monopoly from the private sector. He was an investor, he was a founder of some private companies, and he was able to bring some of his spirit and convince other people, let's give it a try. Which is very, again, it's difficult, but it's doable if you bring the right people. This, again, this is a heavy slide, but the main issue here is that you have to look at venture companies and at corporate companies. They are very, very different creatures. The venture has very, like a commando, it has to focus on one thing. If it focuses on too many things, it will fail. Nobody wants it to do more than one thing at a time, focus on a specific market, know exactly where it's going, understand its customer needs, and solve the problem. Corporate has got a completely different issue. It is slow, it has to solve a broad, I would say, vision, and it has rules and bureaucracy. A startup is not a big corporate, and a corporate is not a small. Sorry, a startup is not a small corporate, and a corporate is not a big startup. They're different animals. If you want, and I like that analogy that this venture company is like a jazz band that has a tune, and everyone has to sort of play together and do everything. Whereas corporate is like a symphonic orchestra where someone is conducting and they have to play everything by the rule. And these issues are very important when you try to have a corporate that forms a venture fund and bring the people to actually work from the fund, from the corporate to actually manage these ventures. It's a different mentality and a different culture. So this cultural issue is very critical. This is important actually. We also talked in the first session about how corporates view this. But what about the entrepreneurs? I mean, with forming a VC, a CVC is actually, its success is completely 100% based on the success of its corporate, of the venture companies. Why would they come? Are they interested? Well, they do. And when a startup looks at a good CVC, they want different things. They don't expect the CVC to be just another venture capital fund and give them money. They want many different things. But they want to still keep their independent management. They want to have access to the technology, to the equipment, to the facilities of the corporate. They want to have a place to test. They want to test their technology, like what you call beta site. They want to have industry-specific knowledge, which is again many times hidden inside the corporate. It was mentioned earlier that it was mentioned about the Soviet ex-Soviet companies that keep a lot of their knowledge to themselves, and they were not enabling anybody to come in and understand what they have. And as a result, it basically had to close down. This is also a very major issue. How do you open the R&D teams to non-invented here syndrome, what you call NIH, for them to open up to the ideas which are coming from young scientists that are not experts in the field but have a great idea, and on the other hand, so let them help the experienced scientists of the corporate help the young ventures, and vice versa, also learn from them. So this has to go both ways. The entrepreneur wants access to the markets. Isn't it funny? Some of the corporates, they want to create venture companies in order to gain access to new markets, to markets of new technologies through the startups. But the startups is nothing, it's a baby. It has an idea, it doesn't have a market yet. It has an idea of a market, and this is the role of the entrepreneurs to understand its customer needs. But at the same time, the entrepreneurs want access to the market of the corporate. As a utility, we had 2.5 million households. every entrepreneur that came to me and said, I want to enter the venture capital, said, but I also want to be able, when I have the product, to be able to sell it to the households through your connections, where we were not allowed to do that. We were not allowed because by law, as a utility, we were only allowed to sell electricity. So you had to change the regulation to do that, and that takes time. This will be, you have to prove that this is a good enough reason to the parliament, to change these kind of issues. So all good in another territory, as I mentioned. So funding I put here last. I'm not saying it's not important. Everyone wants money, and it's important to put your money where your mouth is. Which means if you put a company through into the corporate venture capital, and you say this is a wonderful company, I'm going to support it, also put some money in it. But it's not the only thing, because if you get all as an entrepreneur, if you get all the support, which I mentioned earlier, many times there will be a private venture capital that will also invest. Not always, but there may be. So at least you have to put some money to get the company through the first stage, the seed stage, but then there will be other money coming. But you have to keep, so that from the entrepreneur point of view, money is not the first thing. It has to be there. Oops. Let's go to the last slide. So if I summarize the main issues here, I put together 10 points, which I think are important to avoid pitfalls. They're by no means the only ones. I think the first thing is, as I said, is the people. You have to hire a professional lean management. It's a small group of people, but it has to have both qualities of understanding the outside venture capital, that's one, and also the internal corporate venture. We had one person at the KARAT venture fund that was a corporate person, a typical corporate person with strong engineering skills, but he had very good personal relations with different people in the organizations. And I'm saying personal relationship because most of the things that we were able to achieve, get the interest of some of the engineers or divisions in a product was through personal relations in the corporate and not through a direct order. So it has to come through that, but also we had to create some sort of money transfer within the corporate, so we would pay hours of an engineer in another division in order to give support to the product that came for testing from one of our companies. So you have to have those people. At the same time, these people in the corporate didn't understand what would make a company, let's say, more attractive to the venture capitalists outside the world or the outside markets, and therefore we need both. You have to align the fields of interest. It's no point for Israel utility to invest in medical products. So we had to align the field of interest and the goals. As I said, I mentioned already 3 times, align the goals of the different stakeholders. It's very difficult, but at least you have to pick some of them. In our case, we had big difficulty with the head of the R&D. The R&D officer felt that some of the budgets that we were receiving as the venture fund came on his expense, because if he had them, he would probably do some more R&D. The problem, as was mentioned before, that all the R&D that he was doing was very important for the people doing them, but it was never reflected to the outside market. Even if it was a good product and a good invention, nothing will happen with it. At best, someone will use it inside the corporate, but otherwise nobody will use it. So again, issues. We have to ensure that there's close relationship between the CVC and the corporate, but yet keep it independent. You cannot have the board of directors of the corporate interfere with which company to put money in, because that will create big conflicts, and in fact, many times it's doomed. The streamline approvals. You cannot, in the CVC, you have to have very quick decisions, and as I said, the next thing is, I mentioned tolerate failure, that part of it is not just to have quick streamline of decisions, but also allow companies to fail and fail fast. The faster you fail, the less energy you waste on the companies that are not going to succeed, and it's not necessarily because of technology. We closed at least 3 companies just because we thought they had good technologies, but they didn't have the right people. They were not successful in creating the right team quickly enough, so closed them down. I believe when we started, there was not much of an accelerator model. But if I had to do it again, and it's part of my recommendations to the company, do an acceleration stage first, which means Acceleration means test the idea on the market. It's not accelerate the R&D, it's accelerate the time to market. Check if anybody needs this product. So do a quick acceleration stage, get the entrepreneur out to the market and pay for it. We were not able to pay for it. In many cases, and I believe there will be also in Russia, in many cases, the money which is allocated to R&D or to CVC is only for R&D. But doing today the customer development, understanding the customer needs, is not less important than putting the money into the R&D, to the technology side. In fact, many times it's more important. So we had difficulty with that because of the old mentality of the monopoly and also the old mentality of the similar program, which is the government's own technology incubators. But this is, I think, a very important point in order to succeed today. Stick to your commitments. Once you are there, you have to keep it going. You have to invest in the companies that are successful. When you have the next round of investment with other investors, keep investing. In our case, it was not possible because we had regulation that we could only put money up to a certain amount. And when we reached that cap, we couldn't put any more money, which means in the next round, there will be dilution. So we put all that effort in the seed and early stage, and we cannot enjoy those companies that go forward. So, and it also prevents other investors. They say, wait, they cannot understand this. Why do you stop investing? Is the company bad? We tell them, well, no, it's regulations. Tough luck. But it's one of those issues that is a problem. And again, I'm saying information. Harvest the valuable information. You are growing these companies as a corporate in order to gain value from them. So invest just as much as you invest in the companies, invest in that flow of information and technology between the companies and the corporate, both ways. I think these are 10 points that I gathered from my experience in Israel Electric. If you want to know more about KARAT itself, I can do about it later, or ask me questions. This is some of the companies that are, there's a website there, and some of the companies that we have. The most successful advanced company now, called Panoramic Power, and they raised until today about $12 million from the outside world, so there's definitely, we call it a success. They sell in Israel and the United States and Europe. In fact, 6 of the companies are selling products now, and we have different structures. We have companies that we invested directly, some were joint venture. I must mention that at least 2 companies actually work in Russia as well, in an early stage, sort of collaboration stage.
Thank you very much, Амикам. Коллеги, у меня к вам просьба, тогда вы накапливайте пока, если вопросы у вас появятся. Я надеюсь, у нас будет в конце секции возможность задать вопросы и панелистам, может быть, друг другу, но искренне верю, что, может быть, среди тех, кто будет дальше выступать, найдется ответ на те вопросы, которые у вас могут появиться в процессе, сэкономим время.